this is my first race. I was drinking way too much liquid, but I couldn't even stop to pee. I'd be running down the road in this neighborhood peeing while I was running.
Oh, Lord.
Which was how bad it hurt for my knee because I couldn't stop. It was that bad where if I stopped again, I was probably not going to start again.
All right, as always, huge welcome to the Ultra Running Guys community. We are super excited today. Our guest is the race director for the brand new Mountains to the Sea Trail 100 event that's taking place in March. So we're going to be super excited to talk to him about that. And he's also an experienced ultra runner and just has an incredible personal history of overcoming addiction and some of the things that he's done to really reach out and help people through that. And so with that, Jon Frey, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you having me on. I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here today.
Well, man, we are super stoked to have you. And so I'll be honest, we're really excited to talk about the race. We got a ton of questions about it. But I think before we get into that, we would love just to kind of introduce you, learn more about your story and kind of have our community get that. So I'm going to start with the easy one, man. How'd you get into ultra running?
Well, that's kind of a weird question. So I was actually in treatment for alcoholism and drug addiction. And, I'd always had kind of a love for extreme sports. I did extreme fly fishing and some long hikes and stuff earlier in life. But nothing real major. But anyways, so I kind of started a run club at the recovery center that I was in. And, this guy, Charlie Engel, is kind of a mentor of mine, had come over to help us kind of launch the run club and talk to us. And, he's in recovery as well, and talked to us a little bit about his career. And he gave me his book called Running Man. And I read Finding Ultra by Rich Roll also while I was in recovery down there, and just started training and doing some long runs. And I had another buddy down there that was in the program with me. It was like, we're going to have this goal to go run the Zion 100 in a little over a year from now. Let's sign up and do it. So we signed up to do that, not knowing anything about, very long distance running. And I got to know Charlie a little bit and did some longer runs over at Homestead Park with him. And, it just kind of morphed into, well, I'm going to go do this thing. And he kind of invited me down to this little event called the El Zorro 24 down in Clinton, North Carolina, where this guy, Andres, down there just puts on a little race in his neighborhood. It's like a 2 or 3 mile kind of flat loop down in Clinton, and you just do laps around that as long as you can for 24 hours. So that was my first real long distance event down there that I got to run with Charlie, and it was a special kind of experience.
That's incredible.
It is incredible. And so, it's funny you say it. We actually, we've got a cool connection with Charlie. We're actually going to be having him on the show before too long. So we won't get too much into Charlie's story. But I just have a personal question. Did you know at the time kind of his background or what he was in the ultra running world? Because obviously the guy's kind of an icon, based off of some of the things he's done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't really know that. The first time, I met him down there, we all went for a run together, a few of us, and I didn't really know his background. And, even reading the book, I knew he was a real influential guy, but I didn't realize until later on, kind of who I was running with. And I got to watch the movie about him running across the Sahara. And then, I realized what kind of global network he had. And so it's become pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like we just watched the movie ourselves, and we were blown away with it. We met Charlie as we were doing one of our other podcasts where we were talking about Tracy McCullum, who ran 100 miles backwards. And so we met him that day because he was down here supporting Tracy as well. It was really cool to kind of hear that. And I think if I was running with Charlie the first time, I didn't realize who he was, and then I went back and kind of read about him, my mind would explode. Because he's fascinating, and he is a great guy, easy to talk to, and just an average person like everyone else. And it's really, really good to talk to him. So we had some previous conversations with you before through email and everything, and got some of your background. Can you tell us about some of your 100 milers that you performed pretty successfully in?
Yeah, so I did that first one called the El Zorro, and that was a big test, and I'm very fortunate there was just like one small loop, and I had an aid station there, and had my wife supporting me. Because if it had been a longer course, I never would have made it, and kind of it broke one of my knees down. I had some IT band syndrome at the end that was just excruciating the last 30 miles or so. But I ended up doing that with Charlie. I ended up being the first guy to get to 100 miles down there at the El Zorro, which was pretty cool. And then I went on to run the Zion 100 out in Utah, and that was, another interesting kind of extreme weather race. We had snow at the beginning and rain midway through, and then it was, almost 80 degrees in the desert when we were getting done the next day, which was pretty wild. But I've run quite a few. I've gone on to run the Grindstone 100 a few times.
That one scares me.
Yeah, it's a very tough race for sure. And I've most recently done the Three Bears, Bear out in Idaho, and then I did the Cloud Splitter 100 last fall. And I also do a fundraiser called the Oakwood 24, which I've done that 3 times, and going, well over 100 miles in most of those. So.
And I actually asked you that question intentionally because in the email you said that you don't typically talk about those as much, the hundreds and stuff that you've done. Instead, you actually said that you consider those stats and the result of discipline and consistency, and not something that you typically talk about. That is the comment that struck us when we kind of read that, because your focus is not your focus, but what you see this is as a result of being consistent. That's like a byproduct. So can you expand a little bit about that particular statement, that you see, your success at ultras and your running of ultras as really just the result of discipline and consistency?
And to clarify, he was talking about a couple wins. So
I know he didn't say that again.
I know he did win a couple 100-mile races, but to your point, that statement really stood out to us. So I'd love to hear your answer.
Yeah, so I think it's just a product of a lot of stuff. Going through addiction and alcoholism for many years, I was bad off for a while, and you get used to kind of suffering. And I think I've met a lot of people in addiction that get sober and kind of convert and become really good ultra runners. And I think that has a lot to do with it, as far as, we're used to suffering, we're used to being in bad situations and kind of overcoming that. And a lot of that mental toughness that comes from addiction also translates real well into ultra running, I think. But then again, I'm a consistent guy. I wake up real early, and I put in a lot of miles every week, and I'm consistent and I'm disciplined about it. And, it tends to pay off. And I train a lot on the courses that I go run. I prefer mountain trail, single track ultras. And it's hard to train for in Raleigh, but I spend a lot of time in the PNC Tower here doing 2 or 3 hours, going up 26 flights of stairs and back down. And, it's just a byproduct of hard work. And I try to enjoy the training just as much as I do the race. I actually prefer the training, running with other guys, that kind of thing. And it's just a byproduct of it. I'm not especially great at ultra running. It's just a product of the work that you put into it. It's kind of as simple as that.
Yeah, that really struck me. One of the things that we've talked about before, and actually one of the things I personally struggled with, is, we fall into the temptation of treating a race or an event or something like that as a finish line versus, I think of them now, I try to tell myself it's more like an aid station. It's just this thing along the way on the journey, which is really more about becoming somebody than accomplishing a task. And so when I read that, I thought, I would imagine that's tied in. He's probably way more, consumed with becoming the person that can do these things and the discipline that takes versus accomplishing, the 100 or the win or something like that. So it's interesting to hear you talk about it. So I do have a follow-on question, and I'm kind of jumping a little bit because there's a couple of things I want to circle back to. But I know you mentioned the training, running with a lot of guys and different things. We've got a good F3 presence down here in the Wilmington area. I know that's something you're heavily involved with. Are those the guys that you talk about? Is that a big part of your training? How does F3, or if you can tell us what F3 is, and then how does that fit into your training?
Yeah, so F3 is just this free fitness fellowship, that started over in Charlotte, and it came over to Raleigh. I think it was probably the second city. And I got introduced to that while I was at the treatment center too. They actually bring a workout in on Friday afternoons called the Arena at 2:30. And that was a huge part of my recovery too, was meeting a group of guys that work out, but also are transparent with each other, and they try to lift each other up, and they try to get a little bit better each day. And that's kind of the whole format of F3 is, you come for the workout, and you stay there because of the fellowship and the friendships that you create there. So that's been a huge part of my life ever since I was in recovery. I still do, a lot of weeks, 5 or 6 workouts with F3. And we do a lot of pre-running before the workouts, and then we do boot camp, and we have some, different extensions of running workouts. And I have a group that we do called Happy Trails, where we go, trail running at 5 a.m. on Wednesday and Friday morning with headlamps. It's really cool. So F3 is one of those, between that and 12-step recovery, those are the 2 fellowships that have saved my life and kind of, catapulted my fitness as well. So that's the guys I hang out with all the time. I run with, my main friend base right now as well. So
that's incredible. Just because I don't want to miss it. If somebody's watching and they're interested in getting involved in something like that, where's the best place to find out, kind of to plug into a local F3? And it's mainly, is it Eastern North Carolina? Where's F3? Where's the presence now?
It's all over the Southeast. It's even in a couple different countries now. I helped launch it out in Salt Lake City. It's in California, Colorado. So it's spread quite a bit, but a simple Google search, you'll find all sorts of stuff. F3nation.com. You can find information on there of where your local workout is. So if you're interested in Raleigh, you go to f3raleigh.com, and it'll give you a whole map of where the workouts are, what time they are, and you can email or reach out to somebody on Twitter or Facebook or anything like that to kind of find out about it.
You want to know his name?
Yeah, I got to ask. So what's your F3 name?
My F3 name is Fry Daddy.
Fry Daddy?
Fry
Fry
Daddy.
Daddy, yeah.
That's Fry
awesome.
Daddy.
Yeah,
That's
Fry
awesome.
Daddy.
I'm guessing you probably don't eat much fried food, huh?
No, I don't. That's another thing I learned from kind of Charlie and some of these other ultra guys. I switched to completely plant-based about 3.5, maybe 4 years ago, and haven't turned back since. So it's been really good for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's incredible. And we're seeing a trend, to be honest.
A lot of people in the ultra running community, like you said, are moving in that direction. Even more casual ultra runners I see, not just your elites, but a lot are moving in that direction. Yeah, it's good. Supposedly it reduces inflammation.
Said as a skeptic.
Said as a skeptic. But I just talked to my own family about this the other day. It's like, maybe we should become, vegetarian or vegan.
I did the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it does help with inflammation some. I seem to be able to recover quicker than I used to, but it's hard to judge that because you're running, especially with this long distance stuff, your body kind of progresses over time and gradually gets more used to, these long, hard events. So it's hard to put a timeline on it, but, I definitely feel my body's a lot healthier from changing the diet up for sure.
Yeah, that's cool. We would definitely be in error if we didn't ask you, like, you've touched a lot on your sobriety and everything. What role has running played in you, in helping you become sober and maybe even maintaining your sobriety?
Yeah, it's become a huge part of it. And that's not something that a lot of people in recovery talk about is physical activity. But I'm a big believer in mind, body, spirit. If I'm going to get sober and put all this work into staying sober, I want my body to feel good too. And I think the only path to a clear mind is through kind of regular exercise and a good diet and things like that. So running initially, I'd been kind of on sedatives and alcohol and, something that slowed my system down for years. And really strongly the last 2 or 3 years before I got sober. So when I first quit putting all that in my system in treatment, I just had a ton of anxious, energy, just kind of all over the place. Didn't know what to do with myself. And I would go, the program I was in, we were allowed to go, all over Raleigh during most of the day for 3 or 4 hours. So I would go running during those times, and it really helped clear my mind and get rid of all this excess energy. And it's been, phenomenal for me just to, because I think I'm one of those people that always has a little excess energy in the morning. So that's how I start my day is, an hour or two of running kind of clears my head. My wife calls it go run the crazy out a little bit. So, that's just how it works. And I've, sometimes I go out by myself. It's a meditative process. There's just too many benefits to even talk about on here. So.
Well, congratulations on your sobriety. I think read that you've been sober since 2016.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's good. Every day, I'm sure it's hard work, man.
I am interested, and I know we have other things to talk about, but I think I would be missing if I didn't ask. So, I mean, I just quick background. I grew up in, alcoholic household, grew up going to AA meetings. Luckily, my dad's been sober for close to 40 years. He had the courage to do that. But so I've been around it a lot, and I'm interested in what got you to the point where you made that shift. What caused you to say, man, enough is enough, and I'm ready to make this change. And then probably the follow-on question to that, just because as a group, us ultra runners tend to have kind of an addictive nature. And so I'm sure that there's probably people that are plugged into this that may have some of the struggles of their own. And so the second part of that is going through what you've gone through. What would be any words that you have to somebody that may need it if they're ready to take that step, but not sure how to do it? Any thoughts there?
Well, I'll touch on the end of that question first. So that was the hardest thing for me to ever do, was reach out and say, I need help. And I feel like that's what a lot of people struggle with, is just the fact that they're struggling internally. And I did for years, and I knew that I had a problem. And, it takes a lot to open up to somebody and say, hey, man, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to stay sober. I don't know what's going on. I just need help. And can you help me? So that's the first step. But getting to that point, I was a very stubborn person, like most alcoholics that had to hit a very rough bottom too. I had, got into drugs and alcohol when I was in my early teens, and had, quite a few good years with it. Went to college, got a degree, had a career, but, it's a progressive disease, and it gets worse and worse, especially with alcohol. And I've also dabbled in drugs and speed and all sorts of different things. But I had to finally get to a point, I was bad off. I was having alcohol withdrawal seizures. Towards the end, I was a complete mess. I had 4 or 5 of those, end up in the hospital, end up in detoxes. I got multiple DWIs, all that kind of thing. I'd overdosed off some opiates, that kind of thing. And I'd gotten to the point where, I'd been put in jail a few times, but I'd gone kind of completely insane. I had trouble remembering things, figuring out where I was certain times. And, so I had all this criminal activity. If I didn't sober up, I couldn't go to court. I couldn't make it into court sober enough. My lawyer would be like, man, you got to go home. You smell like liquor. That's how bad things were. I was going to court for my 3rd or 4th DWI smelling like a bottle of liquor because I'd been drinking that morning. So, all that. So the fear of being locked up, the constant, and, you get to a point where it just doesn't work for you. Like alcohol used to be this nice, relaxing thing that I would do to take all this ease off of me. And eventually it gets to the point where it just doesn't work for you anymore. So, I was scared and anxious if I wasn't drinking, and then I would drink and it would just turn into more mass confusion and anxiety. And I was at a loss, I was at that jumping off point where I'm thinking about killing myself all the time, and I don't know. I've tried to drink myself to death, and that didn't work. It's actually a really tough thing to do. And a lot of addicts will tell you that. Like, hey, man, there were so many times where I drank into oblivion wishing that I wouldn't wake up. So I was at that point. It was either I was too scared to commit suicide. I tried to drink myself to death. And it was really the end of the road was, get sober or get locked up or die. And that's, fortunately, I was able to get in that kind of a unique program here in Raleigh and, made that decision and it saved my life. So.
That's incredible. And I appreciate you sharing. And the program that you're talking about is Healing Transitions. And I believe you were involved in that. And from what I understand, in some of our research, it's a free program that anyone that's in the Raleigh area, I think, can be a part of. You can definitely correct me if I'm wrong there. And in, I guess, response for what you received through Healing Transitions, you started doing a 24-hour type run out there. Can you talk just a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, so that's the unique part about Healing Transitions is most people, including me, when you get down to that bottom, you don't have a job. Most people don't have insurance. And most of these treatment centers are very expensive or insurance based or something like that. So the Healing Transitions is a long-term program, like 12 to 15-month program, but it's all paid for by, certain taxes in Wake County, certain liquor taxes, and by private donations from some companies. And a lot of it comes from people that have family members in addiction and things like that too. So, but I did. So I went through that program and I was trying to figure out, I still go down there and share my story and help guys, which is just part of 12-step recovery. That's just what you do. That's part of what keeps you sober. But I was also looking at ways, that first year, all these races fill up so quick. And I was talking to my wife and I was like, I've been thinking about doing something for Healing Transitions, some kind of fundraiser. I have all these F3 guys that back me that would probably throw some money if I did something. And I was like, I really want to do like another 100-mile event this year. So, we just threw it together last minute in 2 weeks. And I said, well, if I go run around this cemetery for 24 hours and run 100 miles, reached out to a few guys and said, hey, would y'all give me 50 cents or $1 per mile if I did that? And that's how kind of the Oakwood 24 started, was my F3 and recovery network and putting all that together. And started this event. We just did our third event this year, and we've raised quite a bit of money for them, over 200,000 in the last 3 years. So.
That's
impressive.
It's incredible. Yeah. And so for everybody watching, you can actually, there's I guess it's a documentary. It's kind of a short YouTube video about doing that. It's so cool to watch. And that's how I first made the Charlie connection, because I was watching it and I was like, hey, there's Charlie Engle, But to your point, and to involve people the way you do, to take ownership of a cause for something that you care about, knowing that it makes an impact and has made such a direct impact on you. What's the best way if people want to plug into that in the future, whether it's to give, whether it's to come run with you, like what's the best place for them to find information about that?
We do a good bit of marketing on Twitter and Facebook with Healing Transitions. So if you followed Oakwood 24 or Healing Transitions on any kind of social media, you get updates about it. This year, we're actually going to put it on Ultra Sign Up. I haven't done that in the past years. I get 200 or 300 people that come out and run with me at some point during the event, but we haven't had a ton of ultra runners. This year I had 4 other guys, finish the whole thing with me. I think I had 1 or 2 other guys the first year. So I've had a few other guys every year, but it's hard to get other ultra runners involved unless you put it on something like Ultra Sign Up. But, we're planning on putting it on there this year and hopefully have some people signed up beforehand. And, it's a great race, and it's mainly about, so a lot of guys that are in the program down there come and run with me during the event. And I've had a lot of people come that are not ultra runners that just want to participate and either walk a lap or run a lap. A lot of guys that have never run more than 20 miles will come, do several laps. I've had tons of people come out and say, this is the furthest I've ever run in my life. We have a bonfire going out there, music, nice aid station set up. So it's turned into a really cool event. It's a challenging course too. The Oakwood Cemetery is a beautiful place to run, but it's also kind of hilly too. So a 100-mile route on there is just under 8,000 feet of elevation gain and 8,000 down. So it's it's a fun place to run, but it's always in the cool months. And, you know, we just have a good time out there. And the main thing is to make for awareness of healing transitions and people in recovery. And, you know, just kind of talking about my story about, hey, you know, I'm just a normal guy. I just come out here and take one step at a time, one lap at a time. And eventually, you know, it adds up to 100 miles of running for 24 hours.
I love it. I mean, I absolutely love the idea a lot. And I think if you do open up the ultra sign up, I do think you'll have like ultra runner signing up to come be a part of it as well. I think you can actually promote the fact that if there's so many people coming out that just do laps, like just to participate in it, you've got built-in pacers for a lot of people towards the end, and it'll help them out. You know?
Yeah. And so I wish honestly that I would have stumbled on it a little bit earlier, because
it's cool.
Typically it's been in December, right? Is that what you're targeting for?
Yeah, so it's always set up as the Saturday before Christmas.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I mean,
we may be there.
So unless something happens, I'll say 99%, because you know you never know what's happening in 10 months. All right, I'll be there. I'll be there.
I'm going to be there. I think it sounds awesome.
Yeah. And so for anybody that's plugged in, if you could get out to the Raleigh area, I mean, you don't have to run 100 miles.
No.
You know, come out, have a good time. Obviously, it's a ways away, but that gives you plenty of time to plan. And dude, I'm super inspired both by your story and what you've done. And, you know, before we get too far away from it, I will say, I hope that I appreciate you being so open and honest. And I hope that if there's anybody that is watching and feels some of the ways that you were talking about, that it's clear that you have gone from one place, you know, done a complete 180 and are setting such an example now. And I hope that that provides hope to somebody that needs it.
And we can also put the link to healing transitions in the comments and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
For sure. Absolutely.
And so we're going to talk about that because that plugs into the race also, but I do have one kind of further question, because you tied it together earlier. You know, you talked about kind of the ability to suffer due to your kind of addiction background. And then you mentioned the leg issue, you know, at that 24-hour race. And that's something you mentioned in the email as well. So we glazed over it, but man, I'm interested to hear kind of what was going on in your mind, what the injury was like, and what do you say to yourself in those types of moments? Because we like to talk about, you know, the quote unquote pain cave or those moments when it may be hard to continue. So how do you tend to manage those types of situations?
Yeah, so you're talking about the knee injury of the Elzaro is the first one. Yeah, so that was my first time running 100 miles, really running anything, I think over 26 miles. I think I'd done a marathon down in Atlanta years before.
Wow.
That's impressive.
My body was not ready for that at all. And, you know, I got to probably 65, 70 miles in, and, you know, I would stop at this aid station every lap, and it was in the middle of the night. And all of a sudden my knee just started, you know, just killing me as soon as I would stop running. And it was really painful. And once I started back up a little bit, it was okay. You know, it was tolerable, but it was excruciating to stop and start again. So I had a really rough time in there. I was running laps with Charlie, and we were kind of on separate ends of the course. You kind of get separated doing these laps on these 24-hour races, and it's amazing how long you go without seeing somebody else, even though you're running like a 2-mile loop. But anyways, it was bad. So I got to the point where I couldn't stop. I would have to, you know, kind of jog through the aid station and keep running around in little circles while I was eating. And I was, you know, this is my first race. I was drinking way too much liquid, but I couldn't even stop to pee. I'd be running down the road in this neighborhood peeing while I was running.
Oh, Lord.
Which was how bad it hurt for my knee because I couldn't stop. You know, it was that bad where if I stopped again, I was probably not going to start again. I tried that several times. So that's how bad it was. I was running around that circle, you know, pretty much peeing on myself, going down the road during that. But, you know, it's morphed into learning how to suffer. And, you know, I've been in bad spots in a lot of races since then, but I always just have to keep moving. You know, your mind starts messing with you, and it's like, I could stop at this next one, or, you know, this hurts really bad. And you just have to get to that point where, you know, this hurts really bad, but it's supposed to hurt. And you have to tell your mind that you're okay with that. You know, this is just pain. this is what I signed up to do, and, sometimes it comes with confusion and worry and all that kind of stuff, but I just keep moving. And I've broken down in the middle of long races and had to walk or had to sit down for an hour. But if you can just keep going, you normally make a turn. Sometimes you can have 2 or 3 really dark hours where you just completely smoked. But I find that if I keep going, I usually come out of that, and somewhere towards the second half of the race, I actually end up feeling better than I have, first half of the race. So.
That's great. I will go ahead and add though, if we do come up, I'm now saying if we do come up for the Oakwood 24 and you decide that you're going to run and start peeing on yourself as we do, I may have to call it quits.
I'm in.
I know you're in, because you'll always, yeah.
Well, hopefully that will not happen.
I hope it does.
Things have gone much smoother since that first one. So.
That is awesome.
Yeah, man, I think it's huge. We've talked several times about the same thing, that sometimes it seems so daunting, in the moment. And I think a big aha moment for me is when I realized that a lot of the elite runners have learned that the roller coaster is just part of it, that you go through these lows and then eventually it comes back up. So it's cool to hear you echo that, especially with all the cool things that you've done. We talked about healing transitions and and the cool things that go along with that. Now we know that's also tied to the race, which we're really excited about, in the Mountains to the Sea Trail, because I believe, tell me if I'm wrong, but some of, when people sign up, some of the proceeds from that go to healing transitions as well. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the Mountains to Sea, so some of the proceeds will go to healing transitions. Some of it goes to Friends of the Mountains to Sea Trail, and they're a great volunteer organization that maintains the entire trail all the way from the coast to up near Bryson City. So I try to support them as well. And we're going to have an aid station run by Healing Transitions guys, and I actually have a couple guys towards the end of the program that are going to run the 50K out there. So it should be a good time.
That's actually cool that you're going to have some guys from Healing Transitions running one of the aid stations also. I think that's a cool idea for that.
Well, they're gonna be running as well.
Well, yeah, he's got somebody doing the aid station, and a group that's also doing a 50K, which I think is cool to think. I'm assuming that'll be their first ultra.
Yeah, I'm sure it will, and I'm most certainly probably their first single track trail ultra, which will be interesting. They're either gonna, hate me or love me at the end of it, so we'll see.
They're going to suffer a little bit, and it's okay.
It's awesome, man. You pay it forward. So
you pay it forward.
Charlie put you through hell. Now you're going to turn around and put these guys.
That's right. That's perfect. So for everybody listening, we've kind of jumped a little too far in the conversation. Can you tell everybody what the Mountains to the Sea Trail race is and kind of give a quick overview of it? And we're going to ask some specific questions after that.
The Mountains to Sea Endurance Race is, coming up March 20th, and it's a race just north of Raleigh that's got a 50K, a 50-mile, and a 100-mile option. And it runs on the Mountains to Sea Trail, a certain segment that's, there's a segment on all the websites and everything from Eno River State Park to Falls Dam. So the race is going to start out at Rolling View Recreation Center. It's going to be, 2 out and backs. So we're going to do a westward out and back that's about a 50K. Once you go out and come back, you'll go back through the start finish if you're doing one of the longer races, and you'll run about 36 miles out from there towards almost to Falls Dam and turn around and come back for the 100-mile. But it is a extremely technical single track trail race, which is kind of what I wanted. I kind of came across that because I had to travel at least 3 or 4 hours to go do these races that I love to do. I love the Umstead 100 and others like that, but that's mainly just a road race, even though it's in Umstead because it's on all the bridle roads. So I wanted to create something right here in Raleigh for trail runners, single track stuff. So, people didn't have to travel so far. And I think we needed something like that in the area as well.
I do have a question about that, about the course itself. For those that aren't listening, it is a technical track for sure. It is a lot of technical parts to it, a lot of elevation up and down. When I say a lot of elevation, I live on the East Coast of North Carolina, so everything over 10 feet is a mountain. And so could you kind of give a overview of the elevation profile for those who may come from the East Coast of North Carolina to what you've got out there in Raleigh?
Yeah, so it's extremely up and down the whole time. So there's no real long climbs or descents or anything like that, but it's definitely rolling the whole time, and it adds up. I think that 50K is about 17 or 1800. The 50 mile is probably around 3 or 4,000, and then we don't have exact stats on the 100 mile, but it'll be somewhere, I would say, probably 8 to 9,000, 7,500. We'll just have to see. But it adds up, and it's a fun rocky course, and it's a lot of single track. So even the mountain races that I love to run, they usually have 10, 15, sometimes 20 miles of a logging road or a four-wheeler road or something like that. But this course, unfortunately, does not have any of that. I'd say it's 99.5% single track trail. I mean, you come out and run on the side of the road, in 7 or 8 spots, but it's normally only 100 or 200 yards that you're on it. So it's going to be a challenging course for sure.
It's absolutely beautiful though. It is incredible out there.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by it because Umstead was our first 100-mile run, and that's about 8,000 feet. But like you said, or 8,000 feet of elevation gain. But like you said, that's nowhere near single track. So in my head, I'm comparing the two, going, man, I can't.
It's different.
And again, we're the East Coast ultra guys, right?
Ultra flat running guys.
I think it sounds incredible. So one thing, and that may be it, but one of the questions I have for everybody that's running it or that's thinking about, jumping in, what would you say is probably going to be one of the biggest challenges that participants are going to face? Would be that?
Yeah, I think it's just, if you're not used to single track, it's a lot of single track. And the miles seem a lot longer once you get out there on a single track. And some people aren't used to having to focus that hard, even at like running the Umstead or something, you can kind of take your mind out, you can look around. You don't really have to think about where you're putting your feet the whole time. So the biggest challenge is going to be focusing the whole time on where you're running. But I think it's going to be a beautiful race. It's got very generous cutoff times. I designed it so nobody elite has to. You don't have to have any kind of qualifier or anything like that. There's plenty of time to finish the 50K, 50 mile. I think the 36 mile cutoff for the 100 mile is very generous as well. So I encourage everybody to come out. I mean, it's going to be it's a great beginner race to try to run your first 50 or your first 100, and I think it's going to be a good time.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but great things about it. You've done a fantastic job of communicating about it. And so, anybody can Google and find out, but you've got some incredible sponsors. It looks like it's just going to be an incredible event. And Charlie is now signed up. We saw he just signed up, so he'll be out there, Charlie Angle. That'll be fun to watch as well.
Cool. I've got another personal question on it because, like I said, I did go out for one of the training runs that you had planned out there, and it was a very wet weekend. Is the course, I'm assuming the course is still the same course that was projected even the day of the training run, right? There is a large, I'll call it a pond or a lake, right? That kind of covered a boardwalk. What's the plan about that? For the 100 mile or 50 milers, I'm assuming they're still going over that, right?
Yeah, so we're definitely going to go over that. So, that's one of the things. It's been an extremely wet winter here. Like just crazy. It just rains all the time. That's been unfortunate lately, and I'm hoping that we're going to get some drier weather here when it comes to March, and I'm hoping it's going to warm up a little bit by March 20th. So we're hoping that it will dry out, and I don't know what we'll do about that boardwalk. We will either turn it around quicker there and make people do more on the eastern side of the course, or there might be some kind of even when it's underwater, it's usually only 12 or 15 inches. So there might be something where we mark that and you just had to run through the water. to get to the other side.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, I think you should keep the course there. The only difference when I went, I don't think the rails were even visible at the time. And so if there are rails on the boardwalk, I'm not even sure.
Yeah, there's no rails on the boardwalk.
See, the whole thing looked like a lake for me. I was like, there's a massive lake, and other guys were out there. They're like, yeah, that's the direction, not up the road that I was running. And so, because I turned the other way. But I would tell you, I'm not thinking that's a discouragement at all. I don't think this is a negative for the race. I think if you're signing up for an ultra, you should embrace the fact that it's going to be some challenges like that. It's not supposed to be an easy course. And I think having a nice water feature like that will make it fantastic. And as long as somebody has a drop bag maybe on the other side, they'll be okay.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's part of signing up for these things and I try to tell people that on the website and stuff too. If you're looking for exact mileage and you're looking for an aid station every 3 miles with everything you need, this is probably not the race for you. There's supposed to be some adventure here. The course is marked really well, but that's what happens during these things. If you run 100-mile races, it snows on you, it rains on you, it's muddy somewhere on any course. I don't care where you are. And you get lost sometimes, and you run through the night, and that's just part of it. So if it's wet, it's wet. That's just what you have to deal with on that day.
Well, it makes for better stories, and not only that, but honestly, I do think that the harder the challenge to overcome, I honestly think that the most personal fulfilling, or the more personally fulfilling it is. And some of my most fond memories are the ones that in the middle of it, I was the most miserable. I think it sounds like an amazing course. One of the questions that I do have, because we're putting on actually our first race later this year, so we're brand new, fresh race directors. So doing this from a race directing standpoint, what have been, some of the challenges that maybe you've come across or had to overcome or expect to overcome prior to race day?
Yeah, so that's interesting. So, I've done the Oakwood 24 for a few years now, but that's more of a contained race, and I actually run that race, which I unfortunately won't be able to on this one. So, it's kind of a leap of faith. It's like, I can look at this, I want this race to happen, so I'm tired of waiting around for somebody else to do it, so I'm just going to do it myself. And I kind of try to do that with a lot of things that I enjoy. It's like, hey, I can do this. It's not that hard. I can put this course together. So, I'd run a lot on the Mountains to Sea Trail and just said, hey, there's this huge stretch of single track trail right here north of Raleigh. Why can't we do a 100-mile race out here? So I just kind of took that leap, and there's challenges to it. Luckily I have a lot of good connections with the local running community in Raleigh to get people signed up. But, it's a scary process. It's like, I don't know if I'm going to get 15 people to sign up, or I don't know if this thing's going to sell out. I don't know what's going to happen. And there's still a lot of what ifs, I still don't have everything figured out. So that's kind of the fun part about it, and it's worked out pretty well so far, getting some good sponsors on board, getting support from the community, have people signing up from all over the place. So, right now we're sitting at, I think, about 120 runners or so. We're probably 65% full. And the permit's only for 200. So, even if we don't get anybody else to sign up between now and then, I think it's been a pretty good, successful first year.
Well, like I said, man, I've been impressed with the way that you put it together. The website, I sent, Jeff and I were looking at it like, man, this thing looks slick. So obviously you're doing it well, especially for the first time. But for anybody that's watching, this is a race that you're going to want to go check out. Like you said, there's room, but we're almost a month out. So now would be the time to check it out. You got the 3 different race options.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out if my foot will recover in time just at least go do the 50K, but I don't know. We'll see. It's a really cool race. And I think, like you said, there's a lot that you've already put into it. I do want to double back just for one quick question for clarification for those who are listening. If somebody is considering jumping in, you mentioned that the cutoff for the 100-miler was 36 hours. What's the cutoff time for the 50K and the 50-miler?
So, that's kind of open to interpretation. I'm not setting any hard lines there. So, I was thinking, the 50K starts at 7 a.m. I'm thinking if you're done by 5 p.m., because you're ending at the start finish, but there's going to be people there at the start finish until the end of the 100-miler. So, you know, I'd say 10 hours, which I think is pretty generous for a 50K race. You know, you could walk the whole thing in 10 hours if you wanted to. And then I think I had, you know, I've run a couple 50-mile races that had a 12-hour cutoff. Granted, these were in the mountains, but sometimes those are tough. It's like, you know, you finish that thing in, you know, 10 and a half hours, like, wow, you're getting pretty close there. So I think we're going 15 for that, and then we're going 36 for the 100. So.
Yeah, I think 10 hours for 50K is plenty of time, and I agree. There are a lot of 50-milers that try to pull off a 12-hour cutoff, and to some degree that actually limits those who may be trying their first 50-miler to see if it's something they could attempt. You know, it's still, you know, it's roughly a 14-minute pace, but it's hard to maintain a 14-minute pace if you've never done one before, and it's towards the end of your race, right? But I think 15 hours for a 50-miler is very, very doable for a lot of people. And so if you're listening and you want to be a part of this, I think the deadline is March 17th, which is exactly 1 month from today, to be able to register. Obviously, Jon would like to fill up before March 17th. So if you want to sign up for it, you don't want to wait to the last minute to be a part of it either. So I think it sounds great. And if I can get in, I will try to get in. I won't go support you at your race because I'll go support Jon.
So probably the final question I have about the race, you know, in the course so well, for people running it, any tips, you know, or any kind of words of advice for the people that are going to be showing up that day?
Late March, you know, you could get any kind of weather. It could be, you know, 15 degrees in the morning and be 80 in the afternoon, and you just never know what to expect. So, you know, my tip is just be prepared for anything. You know, it's a beautiful course. Just go out there and have fun. You know, be prepared to run a lot of single track, but just to have a good time as well.
I think it's great. I think it's a really cool sounding race. I know you obviously said you would like to be a part of it. And again, if anybody's interested in signing up for it, you should definitely get in while you can. And if not this year, then next. Begin training now. Before we end, is there anything that you would like to get across to the listeners and everything that maybe we haven't touched on already?
You know, most of this stuff about recovery and running and all these races and everything is really just about getting out the door. You know, everybody gets all caught up in their mind about how much they have to train and what they need to eat and this and that. And, you know, once you get out there, it's you know, the hard part's over. You know, you're just already in it at that point. So I encourage people that are just, you know, scared or maybe uneasy about doing something like this. You know, I never thought I'd be a guy that could run 100 miles. People look at me and they say, you know, you ought to be playing football or lacrosse or something. They don't expect me to be a 100-mile ultra marathoner, and I never thought I would either. You know, I just kind of took that leap one day, and, you know, it's morphed into, you know, me just getting used to running them, and they kind of get easier and easier every one that you do from now on. So,
Jon, we have really enjoyed talking with you. Everything from your story to the example that you set to the cool race that you're putting on, man. We just appreciate everything you're doing for the running community and for the community around Raleigh as well. So want to thank everybody for plugging in the Ultra Running Guys community. You know, we love you so much, and we are so thankful that you continue to support us. And as a reminder, you know, it's the kind of thing we always talk about. Don't forget to just show up. And I think Jon is just an incredible example of that, coming from, you know, where you've been to what you're doing now. I'm sure that was a series of sometimes just taking the next step or just continuing to show up. And so with that, Jon, thanks so much, man. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me on. That was fun.
All right, man. We'll talk soon. And cut.
Yeah, all of your adoring fans, they're going to want to see you on video.
I love the concept. I love what you guys are doing. I mean,
I know. The good thing is I can just edit, redo. So,
golly, it was slick, man.
You can come run our race too.
It's really nice. We'll give them free entry for life. We'll one up you.
Actually, one more question for you. Do you have a hard stop?
I do.
I know you do.
Okay.
But if his is earlier, I need to understand.
It's like,
It was
Well,
just
that's a long time to talk. I
so-
hope we're not still going at 2 p.m.
it's all up to you.
That's the hard.
He's up here though. You want to look at his face? Look right there.
Well, one last thing, did y'all ever get a hold of Charlie, or he told me you guys might have to do a redo?
This way now I can actually look at you and it looks more like I'm looking at you.
Okay.
I know you got to run. I do need to run, literally to work, but not run. If you say something like that, you just raise your hand and say, hey, I need to redo that because if you put that in, I'm going to hate y'all.
Anything that we can do to help out in any way, feel free to reach out.
He's like, run it. You could run it.
Yeah. He's like, here's the registration link.
I'm not going to tell you what it is now because I want to surprise you with it, but I'll try it like this. Yeah. We're going to try a whole new look this time with you today. So
I
that we
sure
can
hope it works, man.